We are so pleased to welcome on set Tom Calter, who is the town administrator for the town of Kingston, for our section we call Town Talk. Welcome.
Hey, Jules, good to see you.
Good to see you. It's November.
Imagine that.
It's November.
Patriots played last night.
Yeah, we lost. Okay, we're not going to talk about that. We needed to lose, though.
That's right.
But we're going to talk about town meeting that's coming up, which is coming up on the 12th. So you have a Kingston special town meeting on Tuesday, November 12th. And the warrant consists of 22 different articles. Can you talk about what goes into actually creating an article and what they are?
Oh, that's a great question, Julie. People, I think, sometimes just assume that, we throw something together the week before. Preparation for town meeting starts months in advance. Mm-hmm. Pardon me. Every article is developed by the department head who's requesting the article. And then it is drafted and fully vetted by the responsible committees. It could be the planning board if it's zoning. It could be the Board of Health if it's a health issue. It then goes before the Board of Selectmen for a vote, before the Finance Committee for a vote. And if it's a capital investment, before the Capital Planning Committee for a vote.
Okay.
And so all of those important boards and committees weigh in before the language is finalized. It's finalized 2 weeks before town meeting so that it can be published throughout the community.
Right.
And then people are encouraged and welcomed in to discuss it either as a group, individually, at the selectmen's meeting. We want to get as much information on the street as possible before town meeting. And then we attach an addendum to the town meeting booklet with all of the backup information.
Okay.
So that people have as much information as they need.
When they walk into that
when
town
they
meeting.
walk in. Town meeting is the purest form of government we have in America. But it's only as good as our capacity and ability to get information and data to the public so that they can make an informed decision.
And I don't think a lot of people know how many different kind of stopgaps happen before it actually ends up on the floor of town meeting. And you just explained that. You don't just write it and put it in there.
No, it's the same with the budget process.
Yep.
It starts months before the fiscal year begins.
Yep.
And it's fully vetted with every department head. It's fully vetted with capital planning, finance, Board of Selectmen.
Right.
Lots of questions which add to the process.
Sure. Okay. So Kingston is actually incredibly well known for your very long town meetings that go multiple days, because we covered them so we know. What are you going to do to shorten them, and what causes them for being so long?
Well, everything I just said is geared towards informing town meeting voters so that we don't have to re-debate everything on the town meeting floor. Unfortunately, there are in our town, as there are in every town, a small handful of people who don't seek out information in advance. They choose to bring their questions and they choose to bring their sometimes conspiracy stories and theories to the town meeting floor, which really isn't fair to the people that do their homework. But they have a right to do that.
That's right.
And sometimes that makes for a very long, protracted town meeting. This is a special town meeting. There are very few articles that are complicated or controversial. So I think it'll be a one-night town meeting. At least I hope it will be it. I plan for it to be. And I'm finding that our citizens are thirsting for information, and we continue to provide it. And that makes for a very good debate when it's fact-based and not emotional.
Sure. Now, you told me before we went on air that a lot of the things are housekeeping items. Can you define, what does that mean? And give me a couple examples of what a housekeeping item would be.
Sure. For example, zoning laws. There are 3 or 4 zoning articles out of the 22. We're recodifying our zoning bylaws, rewriting them so they're user-friendly, making some changes to bylaws which are more consistent with our current strategy in the town for development or for growth. Where the town meeting has got to sign off on leases or easements of property in order to continue to move forward with projects. There are capital items, paying bills from last year that came in after the fiscal year. Things that are required to be done. We try to save the major policy issues for the annual town meeting, which is in the spring.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. A big issue at your last town meeting was the cost of your legal fees. What will be is that going to be an issue in this town meeting? And what can you do about that for moving ahead in the future?
Again, I feel like I'm always giving the same answers to different questions. It's about transparency. Last year at the annual town meeting, and that's when the legal fees are presented because that's when we need more money to cover unexpected expenses. Last year, we provided great detail as to what the lawsuits were, who caused them. Let me be clear on a couple of points with respect to legal fees. I've been here 18 months. The town has never sued anybody. We don't facilitate, we don't perpetuate, we don't initiate lawsuits
against others.
Okay. But when we are sued, we have an obligation, a responsibility to defend the town in its resources to the best of our ability. So last year at town meeting, it's interesting, the people that were screaming the loudest about the legal bills were the people most responsible for those legal bills. So we simply publish every single spring from now on for our citizens the detail as to who is suing the town, what their purposes are, and what the expense for those actions are. Now it's important to note that we've never paid a claim. The town has never been found guilty of anything.
Okay.
Many of the legal fees are associated with public records requests. The same 2 or 3 people in town have filed hundreds of public records requests.
Can you explain what that is for anyone who doesn't know? What is a public records request?
The legislature, several years ago, and I was part of it, in an attempt to bring more transparency to local government, passed a law called the Public Records Law. And it's a law that allows citizens, almost like the Freedom of Information at the federal level, allows citizens to request very detailed information. And if it's available, the municipality is required to give it and to provide it. And, and I voted for it. I'm all for that.
It's all transparency.
Never did the legislature ever imagine at the time it would be used as a weapon. It would be weaponized to make life miserable for those who work in town hall and to create a tremendous amount of expense for managing these requests, because we're required within 10 days to provide information. So if a person requesting information is requesting the town's payroll for the past 10 years, that's an awful lot of work, an awful lot of research.
Do they have to pay for that? Do they have to pay for research, or is this all done on the town's done?
Because the town is the size that we are allowed to provide a bill with certain restrictions, no more than $25 an hour, or our lowest paid employee to do the work. And they can appeal it to the Secretary of State, and most of the time the Secretary of State upholds their appeal, and we're generally required to provide the information at our expense.
But for towns that don't have a lot of transparency, it's actually a good thing for citizens to be able to do this.
I would vote for it again.
Yeah.
But when I saw an email a couple of weeks ago from a frequent flyer who went online to give everybody our public records address and said, send them requests, jam them up, make them miserable. Well, every one of those requests require legal review.
And you have to respond to them, correct?
Of course.
Okay.
And every one of them require legal review, which results in legal expense. And it's those same people who will come to town meeting and complain about the legal expense, much of which is generated by their activities.
So the people at town meeting can weigh in on this subject overall?
I certainly hope so.
Right.
Our job is to not provide editorializing.
Correct.
Our job is to provide data.
Facts.
So whether it's legal fees, whether it's a sewer treatment project, a water distribution project, we've got both before the town right now. You know, one thing I learned from being a state rep for 12 years, the people of Kingston are very bright. And they thirst for good data. And it's my privilege to provide that data to them. And whatever they decide from a review of that data is right for them, and it's right for us. But you know, unfortunately, we continue to have a small handful of people that aren't interested in the data; they're interested in the drama, and so they don't ask us for information; they make up their own. And keep people in Kingston, and I would say are the vast majority. They're very smart, and they will come and ask for clarification. They'll ask for information. They'll walk in and ask for the detail. They don't go online and talk about it. They just want to know for themselves. We've got a very very smart electorate in this town.
Yep.
And that makes my job very easy
Yep.
because all they want is information.
Right. And yet everyone, and we'll go back to this always, everyone has their right to their opinion and everyone has a right for free speech.
And no one will ever, ever deny that of them as long as they behave in public in a civil way. They don't have the right to come into a theater and scream fire.
Well, no one does,
Right?
correct.
And so they don't have the right to come into town hall and abuse people. And we're not going to, we haven't tolerated that, and we're not going to tolerate that.
Okay. And the fourth is you do a lot of work with grants.
Yes.
And you've gotten a lot of grants
Yes, we
since
have.
you've been here in 18 months. Can you talk about the grant process and some of the grants you've gotten and anything you want to announce?
Well, it's not me alone. It's a team effort. The town of Kingston in the past 18 months has received more than $10 million in grants from federal government, from state government. Excuse me, federal government is now pending. We hope to receive that soon. But from the state government and from private philanthropic groups that believe in our mission. What's really funny is we received a $3 million grant from Mass Development a year ago, 14 months ago. And we're about to announce this week a second $3 million grant in support of the wastewater treatment plant expansion and the upgrade of the water high-pressure distribution system, which makes it possible to develop the southern end of town.
Right.
The entire MBTA area as well as the southern end of town. Every time the state comes down here to look at what the town of Kingston, under the leadership of this Board of Selectmen, are doing, they marvel and they're very excited and they fund it. We are now writing the final section of a federal government grant called EDA. It's an economic development branch of the Department of Commerce for $2.5 million. And they came up from Washington 2 weeks ago, spent 2 days in Kingston, ran a summit from the Kingston Selectmen's Room for neighboring towns, and then toured the overall area. And they love the plan, and they're excited about the plan.
So you have to have a master plan. I mean, everything, when you apply for a grant, it has to be based on a factual plan that you have in place, and this is what's going to happen if we get the money, you know, if this, then that.
Well said. You know, because I was a legislator, people think I have some form of connection
No,
at the
but
State House.
you know the way it works.
I know the way it works.
Yeah.
I know the people that make the decisions.
Yeah.
But if Kingston weren't as visionary and as hardworking and as focused as it is right now, we wouldn't get a dime.
Right.
This Board of Selectmen and many of the boards in town that share a vision for our citizens where we increase our commercial tax base so that we can decrease or at least manage our residential tax base so that our young folks and our citizens can stay in town. They get that vision and they understand that vision.
And that's the end goal.
And that is the end goal. And when folks come to town to determine whether they're going to fund our application, they see that information, they hear those words, they feel that energy.
Yes.
And they say, man, we want to invest in this. And they have. They've repeatedly invested in it. I would bet you by the end of this calendar year, we'll have between $12 and $14 million of state and federal money invested into the town of Kingston.
And you can use that right away?
Right away.
And it's used based on specific language in the grant. This is what you can use that money for.
Of that, call it $12 million by the end of the year, 3, 6, 8 of it will be specifically for water and sewage.
Okay, which you need for infrastructure to do everything else you need to do. So you set the foundation so you can build on the foundation.
You get it. Think of it as a multiple phase process.
Sure.
You build the foundation, which is sewer and water.
Right.
You utilize your undeveloped and underdeveloped properties
Yep.
to better use, which brings commercial dollars, which offsets the need for residential dollars.
Yep.
My goal before I finish my tenure here is to bring tax relief to the town of Kingston residents.
That's great. All right.
Without ever reducing services.
Okay, so just to remind everybody, the Kingston Special Town Meeting will be held on Tuesday, November 12th at 7 p.m. at the Kingston Intermediate School, and everyone should watch it, be involved, learn ahead of time about all the articles. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Julie.
Tom
It's great
Calter,
to be here.
Town Administrator for the Town of Kingston, and thank you for watching PAC TV Community News.